Here with me this evening to conduct this public hearing, Mr. Douglas Halpert, engineer with the Montgomery County Department of Transportation, Division of Traffic Engineering and Operations, as well as Laurie Main, who is our virtual host this evening. Mr. Halpert will be providing the information and details regarding the modification of the Highland Stone residential permit parking area, which is under consideration. I'd like to say thank you, everyone, for joining us on this virtual platform. Please bear with us if we encounter any technical difficulties. Please note that tonight's hearing is being recorded. A link to the recording will be posted on the residential permit parking website by 5 p.m. tomorrow. A link to the website has been provided at the top of this evening's chat box, the icon for which is on the menu bar at the bottom of your screen. You may also notice that your video camera is turned off by default this evening. This helps us reduce the bandwidth of the meeting and maximizes technical efficiency. We request that you please do not turn your video camera on. Likewise, your microphones have been muted. Once the testimony portion of this hearing begins, please raise your hand by clicking on the React icon at the bottom of your screen and then clicking Raise Hand. If you are joining us via telephone only, you may raise your hand by pressing *9 on your telephone keypad and *6 to unmute yourself. Please wait until the testimony portion of this hearing to raise your hand. You may raise your hand at any time during the testimony portion. We will call on you to provide your oral testimony and unmute your microphone when it's your turn to speak. Written testimony may be submitted as well and will be considered just as we consider the oral testimonies. If time allows following the testimony portion of this hearing, we will hold a Q&A session. Please reserve your questions until after the testimony portion of this hearing is over. You may type your question as well into the chat box at any time during this hearing. Tonight's hearing is being held pursuant to Executive Regulation 13-23, Residential Permit Parking Guidelines. The purpose of a public hearing is to obtain testimony to help us evaluate whether benefits of the requested parking restriction outweigh the potential impact on the surrounding community or arterial roadway network. This forum allows you to provide testimony either in support of or in opposition to the plan. Public comments should be focused entirely on the modification of the Highland Stone permit parking area, which is the topic of this hearing. All interested persons are entitled to be heard at this hearing. However, the testimony portion of this hearing is not a forum for dialogue, questions and answers, or cross-examinations. Please direct your remarks to the specific permit parking area modification under consideration. If comments stray into areas unrelated to the project, I will ask that you refocus your comments to the subject project. Following the conclusion of this public hearing, the record will remain open for 4 weeks to allow any person who was unable to attend this hearing an opportunity to have their written testimony and comments included in the public record and be fully considered. The official closing date by which all comments and testimony must be received is Tuesday, December 16th, 2025 at 5 p.m. Submissions may be emailed or sent by regular email, by regular hard mail, and must be received or postmarked by the close of the hearing record. Written submissions will be considered with the same weight as oral testimony. Submissions should be sent to trafficops@montgomerycountymd.gov. That is TRAFFICOPS@montgomerycountymd.gov. After the hearing is concluded and the record is officially closed, I, as hearing officer, will review and weigh all the information submitted into the public record and make a recommendation to the county executive for his statement of decision as to whether the plan has been shown to be in the best interest of the public and whether to authorize the project to proceed. And now to discuss access restriction under consideration, please, I'll turn it over to Mr. Douglas Halpert.
Sorry, this is the reporter. I'm unable to hear Mr. Halper. I don't know if it's just me.
No, I can't hear.
You're right. I can't hear him either. I
Yeah,
will put a quick message in the chat for him. We cannot hear you, Douglas.
Can you hear me now, Sam?
we sure can.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I apologize for that. I'll start over. Good evening. My name is Douglas Halpert, Area Engineer with the Department of Transportation, Division of Traffic Engineering Operations. Section 31-48 of the Montgomery County Code authorizes the county executive to establish residential permit parking areas after holding a public hearing. These areas are intended to alleviate, among other things, safety issues caused by the intensive parking on residential streets by non-residents and commuters, and convenience issues for residents who are unable to obtain adequate on-street parking near their home due to non-residents and commuters. Today, we are here to consider the amendment of the existing residential permit parking area identified as Highland Stone. The Division of Traffic Engineering and Operations has created an ultimate boundary for this residential permit parking area, which you'll see on the screen. The boundaries for this area are highlighted and labeled on the map, limited to, on the east side, to be the west side of Post Oak Road from the northern property line of 8519 Post Oak Road south to Tuckerman Lane. On the south side of the boundary, the north side of Tuckerman Lane from Post Oak Road to 8841 Tuckerman Lane. The west side of the boundary beginning on the west side of Coldstream Drive at Tuckerman Lane, including both sides of Stonehaven Court and both sides of the 8800 block of Liberty Lane to Victory Lane. And the north side of the boundary, both sides of Victory Lane from Coldstream Drive to Post Oak Road. Under Executive Regulation 13-23, the Residential Permit Parking Guidelines, once the boundary of a residential permit parking area has been approved by the county executive, the streets within that area are eligible to petition the county for permit parking. Permit parking would be installed on a block-by-block basis upon the county's receipt of a petition indicating concurrence from at least 2/3 of the households on a specific block. I want to stress that under this executive regulation, residents in a residential permit parking area would be eligible to petition for permit parking. They will not be required to have permit parking on their street, nor required to purchase permits. Permit parking would only be installed on a block after the residents have requested it and a petition has been submitted with at least 2/3 of those households approving the measure. At the time of the previous Highland Stone hearing on September 21st, 2011, our division had received a request from residents living on the northwest side of Post Oak Road between Victory Lane and Bunnell Drive. Currently, there is a no parking 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. school days restriction on this side of the block, which was installed thereafter. At the time, the residents had requested that they be included in the already established Regency Purple residential permit parking area for which Post Oak Road serves as a northwest boundary. The Highland Stone permit parking area, limited to the west side of Post Oak Road from Victory Lane to Bunnell Drive, was designated on July 8th, 2013 in Executive Order 119-13. Next slide, please. So our division has since received a request to evaluate permit parking eligibility from residents living on the 8700 block of Bunnell Drive, where there are no parking restrictions. Residents of this block voted in favor of the measure, 7 of the 10 households. At that time, residents had requested restrictions be provided Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. This request was denied since the size of the block was outside of the established boundaries. The only other criteria that needs to be met under Executive Regulation 13-23 is curb space occupancy rate. Next slide, please. Sorry, one more, please. Thank you. This is a measure of how much on-street parking is taken up on the subject block and how much of this on-street parking is non-local. Next slide, please. DTEO performed 2 curb occupancy studies. The first was on Wednesday, September 3rd, 2025, and the second was on Monday, September 8th, 2025, while schools were in session. The results of the first evaluation showed that occupancy was less than eligibility thresholds. However, the results of the second evaluation showed that occupancy exceeded eligibility thresholds. A list of exhibits has been submitted for your review. In accordance with ER 13-23, public hearing was scheduled and notice signs were posted 30 days prior to the meeting date. The notice of public hearing was also provided to representatives of the 8700 block of Bunnell Drive residents, published in local press, and posted to the county website. Exhibits related to the project, including from tonight's meeting, will be available at the Division of Traffic Engineering and Operations at 100 Edison Park Drive, the 4th floor, Gaithersburg, Maryland, 20878. The hearing record will be up for 4 weeks, closing Tuesday, December 16th, 2025 at 5 p.m. Once the hearing record closes, the hearing officer will submit a report and recommendations to the county executive. Statement of decision will be communicated to all who have engaged in the process and submitted comments. The signed and completed forms for the installation, modification, or removal of residential permit parking restrictions must be returned to MCDOT no later than 90 days following its issuance. The request to install, modify, or remove the residential permit parking restrictions will be terminated if the signed and completed forms is not returned to MCDOT within 90 calendar days of the deadline, or MCDOT determines that concurrence levels are not met. Once residential permit parking restriction has been installed for a participant block, that restriction will remain for at least 1 year before MCDOT will consider a petition for its removal. And now I'll yield back and I'll open the hearing for public testimony and yield back to Sam. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Halpert. Let's see. Laurie, would you be
Yeah.
doing that? Okay. So we'll now hear testimony from those in attendance who wish to testify. We'll begin with the people who pre-registered. If you did not sign up to testify but decide that you would like to, just click on the react button and then click on raise hand. If you joined by phone, again, it's *9 on your telephone keypad, as well as to raise your hand, and then *6 to unmute your phone. Please clarify once you come on to testify, if you don't mind, would like to know your name, your address, just for the record, prior to beginning your testimony. Additionally, you may submit your testimony in writing even after your oral testimony. But again, just please reserve all questions for the Q&A session when we get to that portion. Let's see. Okay, Laurie.
Okay, first, let's see. First, we'll hear from George Karianian, and I apologize if I horribly mispronounced your name.
Yeah, good evening. Yeah, this is George Karianis. My address is 11710 Coldstream Drive. And yeah, I live in Highland Stone, and I have never, I've been here for many, many years, almost 30 years at this address, and have never had an issue parking in front of my home, or ever had an issue with other vehicles parking in front of my home and blocking access for me to park in my home. And yeah, so I would not be in favor of a parking permit restriction on my home. I also have several children who come in and out of the home, so I need, I wouldn't want access in front of my home restricted. It's not just my car and my wife's car, but like I said, I have other family members that come over often, and I would need them to have access to park in my home. So that's my testimony.
Thank you, George. Would Karen like to speak as well?
Oh, that's me.
Or Sharon, I'm sorry. I apologize.
I guess we're at the far end on the western side of this boundary. So there's no schools in our part of the neighborhood. There's no impact from either people parking for the bus stop or any of the schools, any of the high schools in the area. So it would be more of a nuisance for us to have parking restrictions versus other areas of the Highland Stone community. I don't understand why all of Highland Stone is part of this consideration, because to walk from our house to even St. Andrews or Winston Churchill High School, it would be a good 15-minute walk, which most people probably would not do. And the last thing I would like, the way I see it, the fact that we would have to pay for permits just for the privilege of parking in front of our house. It's like having another tax on an area that's already highly taxed. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Next, we'll hear from Rachel Levinson.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak this evening. I live at 11700 Bunnell Court with my family. Court North, we are at this corner lot that abuts Bunnell Drive. Our driveway is actually on Bunnell Drive, and the front of our house is on Bunnell Court North. We applaud Montgomery County and recent police actions to address residents' concerns, specifically adding signage dictating parking restrictions on Bunnell Drive close to Post Oak Road and Gowery Court, and the recent 20-mile-an-hour speed limit sign, which was just erected recently after there have been many complaints about speed on Bunnell Drive. We would like to see these laudable efforts supported by enforcement, including monitoring speed and obeying existing stop signs on Post Oak, at Bunnell Drive, as well as Victory Lane. Recognizing that some of these actions may not fall under this committee's purview, but play into further proposals having to do with traffic engineering and parking concerns. My first concern really is safety. The current situation of cars parked on both sides of a narrow street with limited visibility that's exacerbated by road curves poses a major safety challenge on Bunnell Drive. When cars are parked closely on both sides, passage on this narrow road is extremely limited and may not accommodate emergency vehicles, including fire engines, ambulances, and other emergency responders, as well as school buses. This restricted situation is a daily occurrence on school days. We don't want to wait until a test of this is already dangerous situation happens in an emergency situation. And then on enforcement. Many cars are parking on Bunnell Drive, restricting access to our driveways, door-to-street walkways, and fire hydrants. Multiple cars parked during the week have bumper stickers indicating that they are new drivers. We recently observed warnings on 2 cars that alerted drivers to violations in their parking that are subject to fines. We would appreciate raising awareness to these restrictions as part of the parking permit process and see them enforced on a regular basis. If this were to happen, it would be reasonable to expect that word would get around, hopefully eliminating the current dangerous scenario. Other speakers may be pointing to the increase in parking on and around Bunnell Drive that's attributed to St. Andrews school students. Should parking permits become required for parking on Bunnell Drive, we could expect that demand for parking would spread to Gowery Court and Bunnell Courts North and South. This expectation is borne out by the increase in parking on Prestwick Road since permit parking began to be enforced on Post Oak Road, long after the permit program was initiated, I should say. There's a pedestrian cut-through from Prestwick Road to Post Oak that students use to get to St. Andrews. With this example as a pretest, we would strongly support including these courts in the permit catchment area to avoid these smaller streets becoming high-risk parking magnets. Returning to the initial concerns for safety, should these proposals be adopted, we would greatly appreciate an effort to monitor impact that focuses on traffic during school arrival and departure times, including St. Andrews and Herbert Hoover Middle School timing. The Montgomery County crossing guards are well positioned to speak to reckless driver behavior during peak drop-off and pickup times and should be consulted for their input. We've already witnessed the results of drivers' speed, ignoring stop signs, and lack of awareness on pedestrians. Please keep this in mind when proposing new changes that could exacerbate existing safety problems. I'm in favor of the proposed parking permit requirement, provided that include the courts branching off Bunnell Drive, with additional consideration of other streets likely to be similarly affected, including actually Coldstream Drive and Prestwick Road, but the residents there should be consulted for their input. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel. Okay, next we'll hear from Karen Leshinsky.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, my name is Karen Leschinsky, and I live at 11802 Prestwick Road. We've lived here for over 33 years, like the Carianises have been in the neighborhood. And we also have 4 children who often come and go. So I would be very resentful that I have to get parking permits for them to come and park should it be a school day. I mean, we have a single width driveway just in our home, but at the same time, I'm sympathetic to other people and not having spaces in front of their house. I mean, I totally agree that Bunnell, as well as the courts, I think should be restricted parking for permits. We live right at Prestwick Road, right where that little sidewalk that Rachel was talking about comes down. And over the years, every once in a while, there'd be a St. Andrew's person is what it would be parking there. But this last month, it has been on like several cars every day. And I just thought, oh, geez, these students are parking. What's going on? Well, imagine my surprise. It was St. Andrew's staff that has now been parking on our street. And the neighbors were all going, it's adults, like what's going on? And I said, has anyone called them? So I called St. Andrews and spoke with, the man called me back. His name was Mark McKnight. He said he was the CFO. And he explained that it's going to be better in a few days or in a couple weeks by the holidays because they had a problem with their staff to park. And I said, well, it'd been nice if you had told people, maybe people wouldn't be so angry with you. I don't think you're being a good neighbor to the community if you maybe should have alerted people that this might be happening. And on those, not Bunnell's always crowded, but like by myself, for example, on Prestwick, and as it kind of winds to Liberty a little bit there, maybe people wouldn't be so upset if we kind of knew like, oh, geez, okay, they're saying it's a couple weeks, a few weeks, they have a problem. And he said, I was the only person who's reached out to him, which seemed I was kind of surprised that nobody else had called St. Andrews. And I said, it's unfortunate you didn't choose to somewhat notify the people in the area because it's would be kind of more of because he said they told the Regency Estates people. And I said, we're not Regency Estates.
Karen, I'm sorry. Can we focus on the permit parking itself?
Okay, I would be, if I do think it needs to be permit, but I also think there's one spot, even if you don't think we have enough usage on our street to have permits, there's a spot right between a driveway and the bottom of that little sidewalk that when a car parks there, it's very dangerous safety-wise for all these kids come down that sidewalk, elementary, middle, and high. People in cars can't see those kids coming down that little sidewalk path. At the same time, children on the sidewalk don't have a good view of the street. So I don't even know if that can even just be looked at, not to have cars park at that, between that, there's a driveway on Prestwick and the little path that comes down. And I think we'll probably get more. We don't meet the usage probably now on Prestwick Road that the man designated that you have to have so many spots be out of area people. I don't think we'd meet that threshold now, but I think if Bunnell gets permitted, I bet you they'll come over here because it'd be their next best option. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, next we'll hear from Lubian.
Hi, good evening. My name is Christina Lubian. I am at 11800 Coldstream Drive near the corner of Coldstream and Liberty. While I can appreciate that many of my neighbors in Highland Stone have to deal with parking issues, I, like George and Sharon, just have not experienced that in the 15 years that I've been living here. I, for various reasons, have access during the day to monitor ever since I saw the notification go up. And frankly, there are very few cars on our street during those times. And most of them, I know, belong to my neighbors. So the added nuisance of having to have a permit, purchase a permit, and then I do have many people during the week who are visiting my home, to then have to, manage that would be, in addition to the financial nuisance, would just be further burden. If this were more of an issue, if it were an issue on our street, but as I said, ever since that notification went up, I've been able to monitor. I've taken pictures. It's the same cars because it's the neighbors' cars. It's people who are in these homes during those school days. So again, I appreciate that there's other places in Highland Stone, but it would be a burden for those of us who just simply don't have to deal with it at the present time.
Thank you. Okay, next we'll hear from Julie Wagman.
Hi, this is Julie. So I am, it's Julie Wagman, and I'm at 11607 Gallery Court. It's Gowrie Court. So I've lived here for 26 years, and we actually, on Gallery, are the ones who petitioned to have the signs put in on Bunnell, the no parking signs that are there. We did that because we have two students now who are picked up door to door for school. And it's been very difficult with the school park, the kids that park from St. Andrews parking in our neighborhood, both on Bunnell and on Gallery. It's hard for the buses to get by and for emergency vehicles to get by. So it's not just Bunnell, it's also Gallery and the Bunnell courts that get quite a bit of school parking. So just to answer a question from earlier, we have engaged with St. Andrews many, many times. And their answer to us has always been, we don't handle anything off campus. So it's been decades of this for us. So which actually brings me to something that I would like to put back on the county is, do they ever encourage St. Andrews to take responsibility for their part in the parking?
Julie, we have to stay focused.
Okay, so but that's a
podcast.
question that I think should be answered because it is a parking problem for them that they're creating.
We can discuss it during the question.
Oh, okay. All right. So in any event, on Gallery Court, I thought we were part of this permit with Bunnell. So because I'm pretty sure everyone on our court also signed that permit. I mean, the petition. So I am definitely in favor, and I believe most of my neighbors on Gallery Court are in favor of doing permits. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Okay, next we'll hear from Matt Ashford.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Hi there. I'm Matt Ashford. I live at 11702 Bunnell Court North. And I think that this permit parking system is a horrible mistake. I think it's a tax on ourselves. It's a tax on our neighbors. I'm gonna have Thanksgiving dinner in a couple of days, and I'm gonna have 4 cars come here. And I cannot imagine what a hassle that would be if we had permit parking. Typically, they only, you have to pay for your privilege for yourself to park in front of your house. And you maybe are allowed one, guest parking spot, which you also have to pay for every single year. And if you have 2 people visiting you, then you just have to tell that other person to park way down the block or many blocks away and walk 5 minutes over to your house. That is very annoying to deal with. And I think that the people who are parking here are usually parking during the day when many of us are away at work and we return home from work, and those people who parked here are gone. Almost every single house has a driveway we can park in. It's not really affecting anything. And another problem that has happened before, when we had permit parking in the last place I lived in Silver Spring, they did not update their daylight savings time. And so when we reserved a spot for a specific time, they didn't update their system for daylight savings time. And so they would still give us tickets, even though we reserved a spot for our guests for a specific time. And so I had a lot of guests visiting me, and we still had to pay for the fees. And there was, because their system was broken and there was no one to talk to. There's no one you can call and say, hey, you guys gave me a ticket by mistake. There's nothing you can do. You just have to pay the ticket. And, it's just it's more taxes for very little in return. And that's all I have to say.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Next, we'll hear from Jennifer Sanders.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Sanders. We live at 11601 Bunnell Court South, and I'm in favor for the permit parking on Bunnell Drive and the courts off of Bunnell Drive because we're finding it's become a lot worse lately that we've seen when we drive our kids to preschool or we're trying to go up the street to get to Post Oak. It's very dangerous. There's many times where you have to back up to give room for people coming around the corner and and you see kids walking up the street. It just seems very dangerous for everyone involved. So while I totally agree with everybody on Coldstream or down the line where they don't have the issue that we have on Bunnell, I'm not sure how to mitigate that problem. But my understanding is that the permit parking would be between 8 and 1, so it shouldn't affect anything at night, shouldn't affect anything on the weekends. But if my understanding is incorrect on that, then please correct me. But currently, I stand in favor for permit parking.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. Next, we'll hear from Clyde.
I think it's me, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Chenling Li. My house address is 11909 Coldstream Drive. So I just came to realize that my house is the last one in the boundary that you just shared. So I don't understand, I mean, the rationale that including my house. So my house is cross street of Victory Lane. So we never had parking issues. It's pretty far from St. Andrews or Herbert Hoover school. I'm worried about the tax burden. Also the inconvenience that is going to add to my home address, also my neighbors. So yeah, I want to put my objection on parking permit for my address. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, James Hitt.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity here. I live on 8706 Bunnell Drive. As a matter of fact, the picture that you all had up before the session started appears to have been taken from the front of my property. And I sit on the corner of Bunnell Drive and Gallery Court. So I want to essentially parrot what Rachel Kincaid or Levinson said and what Julie Wagman said. It's kind of a nightmare. Mondays are particularly bad because they pick up the trash, or at least they attempt to. But I have personally witnessed 2 times when emergency vehicles could not get up Gallery Court, for example. And it's such a congested situation where you've got not only the congestion by the parking, but the fact that it's an intersection. The other thing that I have an objection to is, why do I have to pay to park in front of my own house? Why must there be a fee associated with the permit? Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, James. Okay, next, we'll hear from our next guest. We don't have a name. You can press *6 on your telephone keypad. Oh, there you go.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. This is Jonathan Jacobson. I live at 8709 Bunnell Drive. Unfortunately, I couldn't get into the Zoom, so I'm on the phone. I have lived on the 8700 block of Bunnell Drive for 33 years. I have submitted written comments in strong support of modifying the existing RPPA to include our block. Virtually all homeowners on the block support this modification. Ideally, I think that the Department of Transportation should modify the existing RPPA to include the entire Highland Stone subdivision. My brief oral comments summarize my written comments. Starting in 1998, when St. Andrew's Episcopal School began middle and upper school operations, students began to park in our neighborhood in significant numbers. The situation worsened when the RPPA was established on the 8700 block of Post Oak Road and the 8600 block of Knoll Drive. Student parking has had the following adverse impacts on our block: danger to pedestrians, traffic hazards, traffic congestion, aesthetic degradation, and neighborhood nuisance. Despite efforts to address the situation amicably with St. Andrews, the school basically said it wasn't their problem. This is particularly disturbing because the school promised to be a good neighbor when it sought zoning permission to establish the school. I strongly urge MCDOT to modify the existing RPPA to include all of Highland Stone. If only our block is included, students will just move to neighboring streets. Called the balloon phenomena. You squeeze the balloon in one place, it expands in another. And I think the residents in places in streets in Highland Stone where there currently isn't a parking issue will suddenly have a parking issue, and we'll have to go through the same process over again that we are going through to get permit parking in our street. By including all of Highland Stone, students will have to park sufficiently far from St. Andrews that driving to the school may not be a good option, and St. Andrews may have to rethink student transportation logistics and come up with a solution that works for their students and does not adversely affect their neighborhoods. I also want to point out that the permit parking request is for 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Monday through Friday on school days only. It doesn't include weekends, it doesn't include holidays, and it doesn't include any time after 1 p.m., but is sufficient to dissuade student parkers from parking in our neighborhood. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Jonathan. Next, we have Rachel Anglade.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
We can.
Wonderful. I echo Rachel Levinson and Jonathan Jacobson, and I thank Jonathan for his efforts to get us here right now. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I live at 8711 Bunnell Drive, catty corner to the Hitz family. And I am in support of the permit parking on our street. And my main concern is safety. As Rachel and and Jonathan stated, it's very difficult for emergency vehicles, if there's need to, get down the street, even the trash trucks. Most importantly, there are children in our neighborhood who walk, and there's no sidewalks. So I know personally, I drive very carefully down the street just to make sure that I don't run over anybody's child, but I notice that other drivers are not as considerate sometimes. And I also want to note that we do have children on our block with disabilities, and just children generally who walk to school that have to navigate in and out, weaving in and out of parked cars on our street that are not residents. So there's also limited visibility. So and that goes into the safety and not being able to see, based on where you are on the street, if there's any children there, if there's anything, an animal, you would know because there's so many cars. It's also pretty inconvenient for me because there are days that I can't back up out of my own driveway because the cars are parked so tightly, I can't maneuver out of my own driveway. So what I end up having to do in order to ensure that I can egress out of my own home is to park down the street. So now I can't even park on my own property because I know that I can't leave to drive to pick up my child at the end of the school day because I'm not able to get, and my car, it's not anybody else's problem. I don't have a backup camera on my car, so it's very difficult sometimes to see. And also, sorry, I have my notes here. Oh, and I just wanted to stress I echo Jonathan sincerely that those who may not have a parking issue now will have a parking issue if they don't support this. And the parking permit is my understanding that it's only going to be for school days and excludes holidays and times that people will have like more guests and family around. And also just a final note that whatever the cost may be, I just feel like the safety of our children outweighs any additional cost that may be imposed on the neighborhood for those who have the parking permit. I just think that that is of utmost importance. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Next, we'll hear from Constance Sullivan.
Hi. I would also like to comment on being.
What is your property address?
Oh, I'm sorry. My address is 11609 Bunnell Court South. I'm on the corner of Bunnell Drive and Bunnell Court South. So I have people parking both along the side of my house and then on the court side in front of the house. So there's an issue with, literally all the edges of my house with parking. But I want to just echo the individuals who've spoken about safety issues. It's really a challenge for the young people several who live on our court as they're walking up to Hoover Middle School. They have to make sure they're in the grass. They have to make sure they're not between the cars because there's literally cars parked on both sides of the road. Student parkers, I will also say, are not necessarily good parkers, so they frequently do not park close to the curb. So then the road becomes narrowed, and that is where we get into issues with fire trucks, ambulance, any kind of emergency vehicles, because not only are they parked on both sides of the road, they're frequently parked poorly on both sides of the road. And I do agree also, and the people on Coldstream and the other areas around should think about it, because when Bunnell Drive was closed for repairs last week, all of the students that normally park on Bunnell Drive were parked in the courts. We probably had close to 15 cars parked in our little circle, and same on Bunnell Court North, and then down on Coldstream, and even over as far as Post Oak. And the reason that you can tell is because a lot of the kids have the St. Andrews sticker on the back of their car, so it's kind of easy to tell who's parking where. So I just really want to go on record for being for the permit parking, for the safety. Bunnell Drive is also a cut through for people going both to Churchill, up to St. Andrews and to Hoover. So they come up and down the road really quickly, and again, dangerous with cars parked on both sides of the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Constance. Okay, next we'll hear from Jamie Doyle.
Hi, my name is Jamie Doyle. I live on 8703 Bunnell Drive. I have a son with a disability. He's one of 3 children within 1 block of where I live who ride a special education bus to get to school. And the traffic on both sides is so heavy, it doesn't really permit the bus from actually turning around and allowing him to be dropped off and picked up toward the curb. And so what the driver has to do is to get out of the bus to make sure that he can walk safely around the bus in order for him to come home and get there safely. I also echo what my neighbors have said about safety issues in terms of backing up. And I know Rachel Angley does not have a backup camera, but I do. And it is still a challenge to back up into the street safely because there are cars lined up on all sides. And it's difficult to see. The last thing I'll add, which I don't think has been mentioned previously, is the cost of having police dispatched to give tickets in our neighborhood. I'm a person who calls about ticketing and safety issues pretty frequently, and I know some of my other neighbors are also vigilant. So I would also consider the cost of having to dispatch police to come out to ticket these cars that are parking inappropriately in terms of thinking about cost savings. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Next, we'll hear from David Kimmelblatt.
Hi, I live at 11823 Prestwick Road, almost at Prestwick and Coldstream. So I'm not immediately impacted by the cars parking down on that end. But I am a dog walker, and I do walk my dog through a lot of the streets that are on the map, closer to St. Andrews and Hoover. And it's for no other reason than safety. I am definitely in favor of the permitting. As many people have alluded to, um, it's very difficult for two cars to pass, especially on Bunnell. And I've seen some really close calls with pedestrians, children walking to school, bikers coming up and down the street at the same time. All the traffic is coming up and down. So I am definitely in favor, even though my end of the neighborhood is not directly impacted. I think for safety reasons, if no other, then that we should move forward with the permitting. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Mark Mishkin.
Yes, can you hear me? This is Mark. I live at 11613 Gowery Court. It's on the corner of Gowery Court and Bunnell. And I am also one of the families that has a child with a disability that has a school bus that picks him up and drops him off every day. And I'll be honest, the kids that come from St. Andrews that park in our neighborhood really don't care. They don't care if they get tickets. They park their Range Rovers and their G-Wagon, Mercedes everywhere. And we have had to call the cops. I've lived there for 10 years, and every year we call the cops. Sometimes the cops come in tickets. Sometimes they say, oh, well, we're not going to do anything. I'm in favor of the permitting. And if they don't permit all of Highland Stone, permit Bunnell and Gowery Court and the courts. And those of you who are not on our street will find out how difficult it is when these kids begin to park in your neighborhood as well, and how safe or how unsafe it is for not just my child with a disability, but for all the elementary school children, all the middle school children, and all the high school children that walk through our neighborhoods. Because again, the kids that come from St. Andrews, they don't care. And that's it. But we are much in favor of having the permits for our streets for safety reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, that's all I have, Sam.
Thank you, Laurie, and thanks to everyone for your testimony. This concludes the oral testimony portion. We will now have a Q&A section for anybody who has any question for us. Again, you can just click the react button, raise your hand. If you're on a telephone, just *9 and *6 to get there. And we'll start. Laurie, you want to take it over?
Yes. First, we'll hear from Jonathan Jacobson.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to ask some questions. I have two. The first question is with regard to permits. Does each household get guest permits for, say, landscaping companies, plumbers, electricians who need to park on the street? And if so, is there a cost associated with them? And how much does that cost? And how many guest permits does each household get? And the second question is, would you consider just modifying the RPPA to include just Bunnell Drive and the adjacent courts if other people in our subdivision don't want it on their street? Thank you.
Douglas?
Yes, so I'm just tracking down to try and answer a question. So the residential permit rulings held in Executive Regulation 13-23. For residential permits, you can read the first paragraph here. Each person residing at an address on a participant block is eligible to purchase a permit for each vehicle they have registered to that address. Those permits are renewed annually. And then it goes on to say additional permits for other considerations, temporary visit permits, exemptions, military personnel, etc. So I would encourage everyone to look there for their own uh, situations. So I want to reiterate, I guess, what I had said earlier about um, the permit parking area boundaries. And actually, Lori, could you please put the map back up?
Yeah. So do they, how many passes? Do they get guest passes in addition? Like if they purchase a permit for
Maybe,
their home, does it come with extra passes for the plumber or the air conditioner guy?
so all I have right now is what's in the executive regulation. It says temporary visitor permits may be obtained upon request by residents at no charge. These permits, which are subject to MCDOT approval, can last up to 7 days from date of issue.
Okay.
So, going to the question of the area itself. So, in the testimony I heard from people who are being affected currently by on-street parking and those that aren't, so all the residents who it's going to be granted on a block by block basis. So if a block of residents do not wish to be part of the residential permit parking area, that's not going to be forced upon them. The way the project came about, we anticipated the potential for the current on-street parking that was being experienced on Bunnell Drive to potentially spread to other surrounding roadways. And rather than try and address them one by one, we wanted to see if it made more sense to give everybody the same opportunity and this go through the same process as part of the residential permit parking area. So I hope that answers the question.
All right. Next we'll hear from Julie Wagman.
Hi. So this actually goes back to what I brought up earlier, which is it's clear that St. Andrews their students are creating this problem. And I'm wondering if the county can intervene with St. Andrews to try and solve this problem amongst themselves rather than a whole neighborhood having to react and pay extra tax money and all of this. Rather than us having to permit ourselves, wouldn't it make more sense for them to have to solve the problem amongst themselves? Is there any way for the county to help encourage them to engage?
That is certainly something that we can look into, yes.
Okay, I mean, it seems like it would resolve the whole problem we have on Bunnell, on Gallery, everywhere is St. Andrews kids. These aren't Churchill kids. Churchill kids don't park down here. It is all St. Andrews kids. And I think everyone on here who's talking about the parking would agree with me. And it just seems silly that we're having to go out of our way to permit our streets to get guest passes for our guests because these kids who don't live in our neighborhood, who don't pay taxes in our neighborhood, are parking on our streets and we're going to have to pay extra taxes on their behalf. And so I feel like this is very backwards to me.
Oh, thank you, Julie. We can definitely look into it and get you a more concise answer.
Okay. And just so you know, it's their teachers also are parking here, not just when their parking isn't fixed up there. Their
Right.
teachers park here regularly as well. So they've created a situation there where they don't have parking for teachers and students, and they expect our neighborhood to absorb it without them wanting to be good neighbors and engage with us on how to make it.
We have many people that want to ask questions though. So
okay, it's just I think it seems like a reasonable thing to do prior to permitting.
Yeah.
So that's it for me.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie. Okay, next we'll hear from Tim Stewart. You can unmute yourself by, oh, there you go.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I live on Gowrie Court, and so beginning of this year, like the first or second day of school, police were called, and they didn't ticket cars, but they gave them warnings to all the St. Andrews kids who were unable to park legally on our street. And as a result, since then they've been parking on Bunnell Drive, so we can contributed to that problem. So the Bunnell succeeded with the parking study there. I'm concerned that if a parking study were done tomorrow on our street, we would not pass. But after the permitted parking is done on Bunnell, then those kids are going to come back onto Gowrie Court, and we'll have the same problem. So I was just worried about the whack-a-mole aspect. I wasn't clear on the timing of how the requests for the surveys and that whole process works, if it's going to avoid the whack-a-mole. Thank you.
I'm gonna see if I understand your question.
So I guess can you add streets?
So all streets within the illustrated boundary are up for the same consideration, which is why we're having this public hearing. So rather than in putting in a parking restriction on Bunnell Drive only, and then having the windfall from that affecting another roadway. We had discussed the potential of other parking restrictions with residents, and it was requested that the preferred solution was to have residential permit parking Monday through Friday from 8 to 1 p.m. As it was related to the school traffic of St. Andrews. And so that's why we are evaluating all roadways within this area.
Okay, so it wasn't clear to me. I thought this parking study was just done on Bunnell Drive, so that's where the initial permitted parking would be, and it wouldn't be in the whole area.
Yes, sorry. So the parking curb occupancy study was done on Bunnell Drive. We have not since gone back out for the other roadways.
Okay, so my concern though is that if you study all the other roadways tomorrow, none of the other ones are going to qualify. But after the permanent parking is done at Bunnell, all the cars that were parked there are going to park on Gowrie Court to start with, and then will we be able then to have a parking study done then, or were we going to be outside of the time period where we are allowed to do that?
You're in the window now. I don't believe we will be doing another curb occupancy study going forward.
Okay, so did the study on Bunnell Drive qualify the whole area that's in the area map? So
Gowrie Court is in the area map, so Gowrie Court is being considered right now.
Yes.
Okay, and what are the study's been done. Now, what will it take for Gowrie Court to get the permit signs put up? What is left to do?
So the
final decision.
So forms will be sent out, and they're assigned on a block by block basis. And I guess, Lori, can we go back to the 90-day notice?
Which one is that? Access to consider.
That's okay, Lori. So
sorry, I don't know which one that was.
So I'll read again. The permit parking be installed on a block by block basis upon county's receipt of a petition indicating concurrence from at least 2/3 of the household on a specific block. So
yeah.
So the completed forms here. Yes, thank you. So completed forms would then have to be submitted within the 90-day window for consideration thereafter.
Okay, so what's the overall time frame for this? So again, my concern is that, a month or 2 months from now, the signs will be put up on Bunnell, they'll all be permitted, and then the kids will migrate to our street. Are we gonna, and then then we'll have to have a curb study done after that, I understand. I'm just worried that we're gonna miss the window because of the lag in the process.
Well, but you're in the area, so won't they get the notices too, Doug?
Yes. This is the window, so to speak. So that after the closing on December 16th, the hearing record will close, and the forms will have the return forms will have to be back to us within 90 days. If they are within the 90-day window with a 2/3 approval, those roads within the boundary will be approved at the same time.
Regardless of it. Okay, so there won't be a subsequent curb study?
Not at this time.
Okay, all right, that answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, next we'll hear from Karen Lashinsky.
Yes, thank you. I have just another question, kind of echoing what Jim Hitt said. We have to purchase these permits. Is there a reason why a homeowner, a resident, of property owner isn't entitled just to have one. It still would be burdensome to even have to have it, but at least takes off the sting of having to pay for it. Like, why can't it just be granted to a homeowner?
I do not have the answer to that question.
Or how would we go about appealing to have that come to be? Because I mean, I think everybody would be 100% in favor of, why do I have to pay for a permit to park in front of my own house? I mean, we pay enough in taxes and everything else, but why have that extra burden? It's still a burden to even have to do it, but at least it takes the sting out of, I'm not having to pay for it. I mean, who do we take that up with to pursue that question?
Well, we can get an answer for you in the days to come and respond via email, or if you would prefer a call.
Email's fine.
Or Doug can give you a call.
Whatever you prefer, that'd be great, because I think that would be really at least something. And I do echo that it's just going to overflow. If you look at your map and you take out Bunnell and Gowrie and the courts, the next logical place of where they're all going to go, and some even have been doing it now, not so much the students, but the staff, is right at the Prestwick Road, where it's Liberty, and then that circle right there, because there's that cut through right to Post Oak Road, which if they don't know about the cut through, I'm sure they will soon, because word will just get around. Otherwise, they'd have to walk, and it wouldn't be, if there wasn't that sidewalk, it would be a pain in the butt to park like in front of my house. But with that sidewalk there.
Yeah, but we have a number of people who have questions.
Yes, I'm done.
I'm sorry, we need to move on. Unless you have another question.
No.
Okay, thank you, Karen. I'm sorry. Okay, next, James Hitz has a question.
Hello. We've been here for 40 years, so we've witnessed the transition of St. Andrews from Harker to St. Andrews. And I can recall vividly, they had a very nice show that they put on to say that we're going to be a good neighbor. And I know, because I've been in the construction industry, that there are numerous permits required to include environmental impact studies. And my question is, has the county reviewed those plans to see whether St. Andrews is within the limitations of those permits? Further, if the county has not done that, will it do so as part of this process? Another comment that I have with respect to this is that they, in the past few years, have built something on the order of 300 parking spaces garage. And in talking to some of the kids that park on our street, they said, well, we are not allowed to park on the property because we haven't completed our community service hours. So it's a deliberate impact to the community, because they want to punish their students for not completing things. So that's it. I mean, I think this needs to be taken to St. Andrews as a good neighbor of the community. So back to my question, has the county approached St. Andrews with respect to the permits? And will they, if they haven't?
We have not reached out to St. Andrews as part of the evaluation of the residential permit parking area at this time. But that is something that we can look into in addition. The steps that we follow for the residential permit parking area evaluation is laid out in the executive regulation, which we must follow. Anything outside of that, we can try and do separately.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, I can hear.
Yeah, I think that's an appropriate part of this process, because what we're doing here tonight is addressing the symptom, not the underlying problem. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Okay, Dana Stewart.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Hey, I'm Dana Stewart. I'm at 11609 Gallery Court. I would like to, I'm not going to belabor this, but we have worked for many years trying to work with St. Andrews on Gallery Court to try to make this more palatable for everybody. And I do think that, they must have some accountability in this, and I don't know how that's achieved. I also echo the sentiments that we should not necessarily be paying for any of this. If you issue these parking permits to each household, then we'll deal with the inconvenience. But I think it was Karen who said, at least it's something. It's an acknowledgement of, somebody, that this is not our problem. We did not cause this, and it shouldn't cost us money. I did want to clarify something. Tim had talked about the timeline for all of this. So my understanding is that within 90 days, since all of Highland Stone has been included in this petition, within 90 days, on a block by block basis, every block in Highland Stone will have to decide if it wants permits. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Right. So to George Carianis's point, those are folks who don't know if they're going to be impacted by this and haven't been, and yet they will be inconvenienced also. I live on Gowrie Court, and I can't get out of my driveway some days, and we were the folks who called the beginning of the year because the kids were parked sideways, upside down, on yards in the middle of the road on the other side and of the no parking zone where we are trying to get school buses in and out of our court. I think this is a very hard decision for people to make without knowing the impacts of it. I think we at Gowrie Court, Bunnell, and the Bunnell courts know the impacts already and are willing to make a decision about whether we want parking permits. But it seems like this could be run sequentially, so that if there is an impact or St. Andrews makes some kind of a change and gets maybe off-site parking like they should have done, that, maybe the other side of the neighborhood, the Carianises, wouldn't be subjected to this kind of inconvenience and cost. And so I think that we ought to think about that in terms of the process to see how the impacts of the St. Andrews kids' behavior impacts our neighborhood, so that we can mitigate this maybe for some folks. And I think that, and maybe that is not the normal process here, but that seems like something that we could take into consideration so that we're inconveniencing as few of us as possible.
Thank you, Dana.
And I would like you guys, and I know this is outside the scope of this, but, some kind of a conversation, some kind of accountability with St. Andrews. I'm one of the people who has tried to do this amicably as a neighbor, and their unwillingness to engage at any level. I mean, it has been atrocious. It is disrespectful to all of us, and now all of us will be paying literally and figuratively for their behavior. And I think that if the county can bring anything to bear on this, they should. And I would also, in that vein, ask the county to enforce the current restrictions that we have, because they don't. We have kids parking all over the place. We call the police. They're in the intersections. They're outside of the parking zones. And the police come through or don't come through. They don't ticket them. They maybe give them a warning. Mostly they don't show up. And we worked long and hard to get those restrictions put in place to increase the safety and passability of our roads. So thanks for considering all of that.
Thank you, Dana. Okay, Rachel Anglade.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for taking the time for these questions. To Julie's point earlier, I think she might have asked one of the first questions. I agree that we probably should try to work with St. Andrews, but I guess it's the inverse of that. Is it possible to still speak with them? I would prefer doing the permitting first, because as you've noticed, like Dana's comment, Jonathan and others have commented that they've attempted for years to work with St. Andrews to no avail. So I wouldn't hold my breath on them like working this out, even if it's with the county. So I wanted to know that if the permitting is done, can you still try to work with the county? I mean, can the county still work with St. Andrews even after the permitting is done? That way, maybe after the year, if they're able to do something within the year's time, that the permitting is in place, maybe we can have them removed. That way, there is still a cost assessed to the owners, to the homeowners, that can be just a temporary cost burden. My other question, so that's my first question. Can the county still work with St. Andrews even after we have the permit? Because I'd rather have the permit first, because I don't trust St. Andrews is going to do anything before that time. So the other question I had, what are the consequences for, let's say we do have the permitting, what would be the consequence of ignoring the permitting signs? It sounds like ticketing is what's been going on or not going on. Would that be towing? Because I think if the consequence is towing, maybe we'd have more cooperation. And I think I had a third question, but I can't remember what that is. But my notes have two here. So those are my two questions. Thanks.
So as stated previously, with the process that we are required to follow is laid out in the executive regulation. Parallel or separate to this process, which we are evaluating for the residential permit parking area, we can pass along the request for the county to coordinate with St. Andrews, but that's not something that's completely within my purview at the moment. The second question about the level of enforcement is not something that I can speak to. That would be through county police.
Okay, Matt Ashford has a question.
Hi there. So I just want to clarify, if I live at a house with multiple cars, does that mean I have to pay a fee for every car for every year? If I have a car, my wife has a car, someday my daughter's gonna have a car. If I'm paying a fee every single year for 10 years for all three cars, it's really gonna add up to a lot of money. So I just want some clarification on how much that would be and if we're charged a fee per car per year and if that can increase, arbitrarily.
So residents living within a participation block are not required to purchase permits.
Not required, but if we don't want tickets.
Sure. In the regulation, it says each person residing at an address on a participant block is eligible to purchase a permit for each vehicle they have registered to that address. These permits are renewed annually. MCDOT utilizes Maryland Motor Vehicle Administration records to determine whether a vehicle is eligible for a permit, and therefore resident need only provide vehicle license plate and number.
And pay a fee.
Do we know how much they cost us?
I do not have the fee structure at this time. I believe the fees are assessed after our PPA is established.
Okay.
But there is
kind of important to know how much this would even cost. So, agree to something without even knowing how much it's going to cost, right? Is that going to be posted somewhere?
Find out, Matt.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something we can find out. We can speak with management and find out and provide you a response.
Okay. And then what is the, process like, because we have this big hearing to, possibly, have these taxes. And then what is the process like if they decide to increase, the cost of a permit? I mean, we don't get to vote on that.
That's a good question, and we'll definitely find out for you.
Okay.
All
Where
right.
would that information be posted?
I'm sorry.
Where would that information be posted?
Well, I can certainly look on the website, but we can also ask management. I'm sure that our head engineer.
I'm saying after you look up the answer, where would you post it?
Matt,
We'll email you directly.
Matt, I just went on the parking permits Division of Parking website, and I will drop a link in the chat, and it just has quite a few Q&As about residential parking permit, the things related to the cost and all of that. So for each person, so I'll drop it in the chat right now.
Okay, so it sounds like there's no real way to determine what the number is right now.
There should be a fee schedule on the website, I would think. And if not, we can definitely find out.
Okay.
And we'll respond to you directly.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Matt. Okay, Karen Lashinsky.
Thank you. I have two questions. One, and where is there a template for the petition that we need to have a certain percentage of the block sign off on to say that they want the permit? Is there a template that we can use so that it meets all, dots all the I's, crosses the T's of what the county wants? And if so, where would we get this template for petition just saying, I want permit parking? And then the second part is, we know about the cost, and my question before about where would we take it up, and you're going to get back to me about where to take it up, like why do we even have to pay for a car that we own, but how is the whole rest of this group going to know the answer to that, like, you know, other people, like, because you're going to get back to me, but then how would everybody else also know the answer, like how to pursue to get the fee like removed for our area or something, would be a thing to have. And also, I know there's at least one person from St. Andrews on this meeting. I can see them of a high up position of operations. I'd be curious to see what they have to say about anything about all this, because this is, it'd be nice to hear from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
So we can provide a petition, and that can go out on the block by block basis for those who are interested. The restriction for the permit parking, if it's installed, that restriction will last for 1 year before it's considered for removal.
So you send out forms to them, and then the final decision is sent via the whole address list. So everybody that was notified about this hearing will receive that decision, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, great. Okay, Jonathan Jacobson.
Hi. Yes, thank you. I believe that there may be a representative of Councilman Friesen's office on this call, and I'm wondering if the councilman has engaged with St. Andrews, and if the councilman has not, can the councilman engage with St. Andrews? I agree with all my neighbors that having to purchase permits is a second best solution. The best solution would be for St. Andrews to take responsibility for the problem they've created and figure out a solution that doesn't adversely impact the neighborhood. That would be great, but given the efforts that I've taken and that my neighbors have taken, has fallen on deaf ears. They don't care. It's not their problem. And maybe they'll listen to the county council. Maybe they won't. But I agree that, this is a second best solution. But, yes, it costs $20 per permit per year. But, if a child is hit and killed in the street, a $20 per vehicle per year is a infinitesimal fee compared to the loss of a child's life.
Thank you, Jonathan. Actually, Matt Higgins is no longer on the platform or joined the hearing, so I apologize. He's not able to speak tonight. And I don't know who the representative of St. Andrews is to unmute them. If they would like to raise their hand, I'd be happy to call on them. Next, we'll hear a question from George Carianis.
Oh, this is actually Sharon Carianis. We're sharing the same computer.
Yeah.
But I share many of the residences that have given testimony and even asked questions. I share a concern with safety within the neighborhood as far as driving patterns that occur at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. Specifically in front of our house at the corner of Coldstream and Liberty, since we've lived in our house, there have been 5 car accidents in the intersection of Coldstream and Liberty. And at times people, including students driving the cars, had to go to the hospital. There's no enforcement of stop signs within the neighborhood. Definitely this speed limit of 20 miles per hour often is not followed, and there's no enforcement of the speed limit. And in most of the neighborhood, our streets are without sidewalks, so students do have to walk in the streets. Is there any consideration for other things that can be done besides just parking restrictions to add, like, say, sidewalks or enforce the speed limits within our neighborhood, particularly at 3 p.m. when high schools are letting out?
So the process for residential permit parking areas does not include full traffic studies of intersections specifically or presence of sidewalks. If you would like to have any of those concerns that you listed evaluated, that would be separate from this effort.
Okay, next we have a question from James Hitt. Sorry.
Hi. There was an earlier question from Karen Lashinsky with respect to her question. Mr. Halpert said he would respond to her directly, and I think there was another person's question that was is going to be handled in the same fashion. And she asked, well, how will the rest of the community get the answers to those questions? And I did not hear an answer to that.
Well, if you would like, we can send the responses to everyone on the address list.
I'm for that.
Okay. Yeah, we'll make a note of it and we'll respond to everyone.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Jonathan Jacobson.
This is not so much a question, but for FYI, I did request a traffic study a number of years ago for the purpose of having a no left turn put on Bunnell from Post Oak coming up from the schools because of the volume of cut through traffic, which is just as hazardous, if not more hazardous, than student parking. And I was told that we did not meet the criteria, which I find hard to believe, given the volume of cut through traffic that comes through between, say, 7:30 in the morning and 8:30, often on high rates of speed. I know this is outside the RPPA process, but I would urge the county DOT to look at ways of funneling the pickup and drop off traffic, keep it limited to the roads like Post Oak and Victory and Gainsborough, which are designed to handle a heavier load of traffic, and keep them off the smaller neighborhood streets.
We can certainly ask about that. I don't know, Doug, do you know if that's something that
Access restriction is not part of the residential permit parking area process. I don't know off the top of my head when that request was, or that previous evaluation was performed, but that can be evaluated under a separate effort if you'd like to submit separately. But the access restriction process is a completely separate effort and has its own executive regulation of steps that the MCDOT must follow.
Okay. And you can send a request for an access restriction to the traffic ops email. Let me put that back on the screen for everyone. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, Stan.
Thanks, Laurie. Thanks, everyone, for your contribution to this meeting. The public will keep the record open for 4 weeks, just so, if you want to encourage neighbors or anybody else to submit written testimony, those are going to be due by December 16th at 5 p.m. And you can submit by email or regular mail. But also just keep in mind, they must be received or postmarked by the close of this, the record date stated. Submissions should be sent to restrictions. And Laurie, if you don't mind projecting this or dropping it in the chat, restriction under consideration, Highland Stone Division of Traffic Engineering and Operations, 100 Edison Park Drive, 4th floor, Gatesburg, Maryland, 20878. And any other information could be emailed to us at trafficops@montgomerycountymd.gov. That's trafficops@montgomerycountymd.gov. Again, we thank you all for participating in this discussion, and I wish everybody a good evening. Goodbye.